Your bot might solve like incredible math problem. And yet you ask a simple question, it can like completely fail on
hallucinate on you.
Its back. Yeah. So I think it's just we expect miracles, but I think what I'm saying is like we need to put in work.
How are you feeling about AI? Maybe quietly wondering, is AI coming for my job? Maybe feeling overwhelmed or unsure how to actually use AI in your work without handing over your brain? This conversation will help. Today, I'm talking with AI product leader Tatsiana Maskalevich about what's hype, what's real, and what smart people are still getting wrong about AI. Because right now, a lot of people are using AI like a one-off chatbot. They ask a question, get an answer, maybe tweak a prompt, and move on. Tatsiana wants us to think bigger. You'll learn how to move from random prompts to real AI workflows, how feedback makes AI more useful over time, and why critical thinking and collaboration matter even more as AI becomes part of everyday work. We also get into what executives, mid-career professionals, and early career employees should be actually doing right now to stay valuable and relevant. If AI has been sitting on your mental to-do list and you're not sure what to learn first, this episode gives you a practical place to start. Let's get into it. Tatsiana, welcome to Work Unscripted.
Hi, Marlo. Thank you for having me here. I'm excited to be here.
I am so excited to talk to you about today's conversation, which is all about AI. Now, you have built AI products that serve millions of users across industries. What do you think, right off the bat, what is the most common misconception that you hear from really smart people about where AI actually is right now and where we're headed?
That is a wonderful question. And I would say that probably at this point, in talking to so many different people, educators, executives, engineers, operators, salespeople, the biggest misconception I see is that the way people use AI right now at home, at work, is probably not the way you can or able to compound it to truly see the value. And here's what I mean. For example, Marlo, do you put something in your favorite chatbot?
I do. I use Claude. I love Claude. I used to use ChatGPT, but we broke up a little while ago.
Okay. Well, you know that aha moment when you get like, okay, give me 3 ideas of how to approach my next marketing, or I'm so bored with my food right now. Give me a plan. So that's great.
I do use it for my workouts and I do use it for my menu. You're right. I use it for lots of things. Correct.
Well, great. So that is instantaneous sort of value. Mm-hmm. And then you go, you do your thing. It might be good. It might be bad. But none of your agents, none of your chatbots know about it. They don't know if something landed, what difference it made, what next action you took when you got the outcome. Did you actually cook the dish? Did you do the full menu? Did something work? Did something not work? So when you think about your own intelligence and as a professional, that experience is what compounds you and your skills. And that's what is needed for AI. Now, we build a lot of things really, really fast. So it's hard to keep up. But a lot of that exists as an underlying sort of, I would say, momentum in where AI is headed. And I think the misconception I see right now is that a lot of people get value, that incremental value from AI in those day-to-day interactions. There's a big gap in moving from those day-to-day interaction and when it compounds. For example, for me, I did my taxes this year. So I had my chatbot go through my email, just the regular stuff, finding all my expenses, categorizes, etc. So one time, a great hit. I sent it to my accountant. What would take like maybe weeks before, because I had to do it all the time. Now it took me an hour. But then I went further with that. So I was like, why would I do it every year? I created a system that scans my inbox. I scan my physical receipts every week. And it categorizes everything. And then as a compounding factor, now I have my mini business review every week or every month, so however I want to. And now your system, your AI knows a lot more about you and about your business and about the things. And this is what I mean by compounding. And this is what I see as the biggest gap in understanding of current capability.
So we are not using it in a compounding way. We are not going back and giving it the feedback. You're right. I mean, on my menus, for example, I will tell it which menus I didn't like, right? Or which things didn't land or which tastes didn't land. But if I don't do that, the next week, I'm going to get more menus that might have things that don't land. So most people, or you're saying, are not going back and actually giving the AI the feedback that we would necessarily get in the office, even on a project that we work on.
Yes. I would say that biggest aha moment I see in people when you stop trying to force your existing patterns, workflows on how you do things into the AI tool. And when you stop for a minute and you say, if I would start again, knowing what I know about the system, about this chatbot, now you have agents, now you have a whole ecosystem of things. How would I do this thing from first principles? And this is where the biggest unlock happens, right? How would I think about my meals or my planning of both experimentation and a routine in a new way, but then I treat it as an experience, as a compounding knowledge, both through feedback. Just think about yourself. What do you need? Feedback. You need to do sometimes things the hard way to learn the easy way. But it's very difficult if you don't know if something is good or not good. So think about it when you're in the workplace. I think the most desired piece that I hear from everyone as a former manager and a coach is people want feedback. People want to know, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? So it's the same thing with AI. You might have something very impressive, your bot might solve incredible math problem. And yet you ask a simple question, it can completely fail on
hallucinate on you.
Back. Yeah. So I think it's just we expect miracles, but I think what I'm saying is we need to put in work.
You have to put the work into it. Now, the agent piece of it, that is also, I think a lot of people are not using agents. I know I am not using agents. I am scared to give Claude or any of these programs access to my email, to my, you have it accessing your email, or a lot of these AI companies will say they'll answer your emails for you, or they will send out, business development emails out to people. I am way too scared to do that. Are lots of people doing that? Are some people doing that? Is everybody doing that? And I'm way behind already?
Well, it is a real problem. Look, it's not what you're identifying truly is, it's that layer of security that existed in your system because you kind of outsourced it, for example, to Google for Gmail or maybe Microsoft if you're using that. You also have a lot of the slow ways of doing things that made security just more resilient or your system more resilient. That kind of fear is warranted because it's unprecedented right now. It's very easy to give access to everything. And I've seen even in my own systems with very strict instructions and guardrails, unless I physically, by physically I mean software-wise, institute or put sort of a walled garden around certain information, the system can reason itself and being I just want to be a helpful agent. So I'm going to find that password. I'm going to log in here. So the idea here is that you absolutely can and should bring your contacts into the system for the value that you could get. But it requires work, right? It requires understanding. It requires thinking about trust differently. Does this data still live in a system of record, or does it get absorbed by somebody else or some other company? Does this company, how does it treat your data? Where is a get process? How does model process it? So for example, like if I use something like Codex from OpenAI or Claude Cowork from Anthropic, I think about those things, right? I like have certain permissions. I, do certain action guardrails. Like a lot of my accounts have certain level of access restrictions. So the agent will just not be able to do that, even if they kind of somehow on their own volition, in the sense of being very helpful, AI agent decides to do that. I mean, organizational, that existed already. Just think about it. In many corporate worlds, like you have restricted access to certain things, certain data privileges. So, it's kind of building up on that, but you no longer can assume that because your password is written down somewhere or stored somewhere else, that when you give a permission to the system, like you have to be really thoughtful about it. So I guess this is another new thing that you sort of have to learn and absorb. It's not just prompting. It's not just how you piece the systems together. It's also the security part. How do you make sure your information is secure? How do you make sure that something important does not get exposed? And, I always advocate is like not trying is also failure. So how do you find ways to try it in a safer way where we might not leave your personal computer, right? Like the agent can be running on your computer or some other ways so that you don't necessarily expose yourself to the maximum risk.
Yeah. And you've sat on both sides. I mean, you've been consulting for companies that have adopted AI. You've been building it on the inside from OpenAI or in OpenAI. So you've seen the risks of when somebody just says, hey, agent, do all this for me. What does that dual view teach you or what do you know, shall we say, that most of us don't know on the outside of AI and are just users?
I'd say what I know, or rather my experience, that maybe most people know but don't necessarily exercise, is that you gotta have to adopt the learning mindset. And that goes back to kind of the preparedness. You cannot necessarily completely hurricane-proof your house that withstand any kind of storm. At some point, that effort of preparing is gonna, I don't even know if you're gonna have a house anymore, maybe somewhere underground, some bunker, who knows. And yet you can prepare, you can put something on your windows, right? Like you can maybe eventually like raise up your house if it's in a flooding area, etc. So I would say that experimentation mindset and learning mindset is something that we know and don't know. And that's kind of that curiosity. What would happen if I do this? What am I discovering? Am I thinking about problem in a way that, kind of feeds the technology, but also what am I trying to solve? What am I trying to answer? So we tend to, our brains, for good reasons, tend to default to patterns and workflows, etc. And then, of course, we have anxiety. We have all normal human defense mechanisms. So you kind of have to work a little bit against that, but not necessarily fighting it, but approaching it with curiosity. Like, what would happen? And I think the trust part of it is important. So, we all know first impression, and we often judge our AI experience with first impression. But first impression might also depend on how you ask the question, or how do you pose the problem, or what context exists, and how is your system connected. If I told you example about my accountant, interaction, I would probably not be able to say that like now I can have my business review if I did not connect all the pieces. And trust me, the story can be 5 seconds long, but it took me a good week of like meandering a little bit. Oh, what do I see here? Oh, that's weird. Why is it doing this? So that curious mindset, that's almost like a playful, I don't know if I may, inner child, and just kind of rethinking things. Like, this is how I would have done if I had Excel, if I have this, copy, paste here, maybe some a little bit code writing here and there. But now I can do it differently, and how. And so learning by doing is something you will see both internally and with the successful clients in my normal kind of interaction.
You know what's so interesting, Tatsiana, is I know a lot of people who don't even use AI at all. At all. Nothing. And when you say something like Claude, they go, oh, who's Claude? Is that a friend of yours? And so what would you say to those out there who are not doing anything with AI and just kind of burying their head in the sands?
Look, I'm not here to say right and wrong. I'm sure people have their own reasons and their beliefs. I would say that you might decide not to do it, but I would say make this decision for yourself by trying it first and see what works and what doesn't. You know, I would say that a lot of people worries, or just sometimes it's an access problem. Like, first of all, we all need to use it because then the voices are heard of people who are only using it. So we need the voices of diverse professionals, parents, you know, we need to hear about this experience. How else will we learn? You know, coming back to that feedback aspect. And then secondary thing is that, you know, when you make a decision for yourself, obviously AI doesn't come, it's not just like a rosy picture. There's obviously risks. I just named one is the security, right? And you'll probably hear from many founders of the companies or other leaders in the space about certain cybersecurity restrictions, etc. These models are very intelligent and they're very good at puzzle solving. So, and there's also other artifact of this is that there's some things that we should try and then decide whether it's worth our time. So I recently was looking at AI summarizing things, for example. Very helpful. Sometimes, like you strap on time, you just want to see what it's about, or you're learning a new topic, and then you just like, okay, give me a summary of this paper, for example, or this like thought leadership. Okay, all good, but you just outsource your thinking about it. You literally took somebody's interpretation, maybe a good one, maybe not a good one, and totally like took it for source of truth or not. And maybe you have experience in a domain to say like, you might be overreaching here, but maybe not. And then you move on. And I'm not advocating that you cannot use the summaries, but I think we need a little bit of a critical judgment here is like, what is the purpose of the summary versus me doing things the hard way, the reading the whole thing, the doing the research, etc. So I always say that like to people who are against AI or never using AI, I guess what I'm trying to say here is that it's not either or. It's like a duality, right? It's together. And everyone decides on their own. Everyone has a freedom to decide on their own or how they're using it. But I would not just kind of bluntly say, do not do it because the people, the technology is advancing and it's very important for technology to get your input from doing this, from using it, and for you to also form the opinion that it has the hands-on experience versus maybe a value base, which there's nothing wrong with.
Yeah, I love that you brought up critical thinking because I think that's what's so interesting about AI is that it will never replace your critical thinking. But our critical thinking is also, if you think about it, conditioned based on how we've been conditioned, right? In whatever areas that we've been conditioned to think. And so kind of goes circular in a way, right? So, but the critical thinking is the one thing and the one job and the one thing that will never be outsourced overall, because even when you get the inputs or get the outputs from AI, you've got to be able to recognize whether or not it's hallucinating on you, whether or not it's convincing you of something that's completely not true, whether it's just agreeing with you. I found ChatGPT to be very agreeable with everything I wrote, and it's not challenging you at all. So I think that's the one thing that people have to sharpen. But I also feel like, isn't it the one thing that like AI almost dumbs down in a way?
Yeah. It is a very good, maybe philosophical question, maybe for a longer kind of pondering.
Yeah, it could be. Could be a very long conversation on that one, right?
I think we can go there with all the modern technology, right?
Yeah.
I think I like to think about it from the first principles of what we're trying to achieve, right? With any kind of like big reframing of how we operate, whether it was industrial revolution, whether it's invention of internet or social media.
All these super cycles, yeah.
We all come back to like kind of a pendulum. We swing in different direction. The point is there's always going to be, it's like not either or. It's finding out the boundaries. It's finding out the constraints. And, when you are adult and you have a lot more experience, you kind of have to trust yourself. And I think that's the learning that we are all experiencing right now. Just look, Marlo, even in this moment of conversation, you said, well, it's too agreeable with me, or it's too simplistic in the way that it talks about it. Or every chatbot has its own favorite format of conversing. And then, when you put that into the framing, then all of a sudden, you want that information in that way, or don't. You might be just really dislike bullet points or something like that. But I would say that it is your experience to come to, and then you put a boundary. The interesting part about this technology is that you can apply the boundary. And this is kind of coming back to my main kind of opening thing, is that we have to rethink our workflows. This is our critical thinking. And let me give you another example. If I am a student or I'm learning something, right, it's very tempting for me to just I have a question, get an answer. Okay, do it once, nice dopamine hit, do it twice, months goes by. Did I learn anything? Maybe, maybe not, likely not. And then you have another student who is curious about something and researching something. I'll give you an example, what I did it with my project, when I had a construction project in my house. You keep asking why, and why is this? And if you don't understand, for example, what's the difference between, ceramic tile and porcelain tile, you can ask is what's better? Okay, this better or this better? And why is it? So this is the ability of asking why, and ability to understand it. But the beautiful part about this technology, it can meet you where you are. You can explain to you things in your own way. Sometimes I would say, if something is very complicated and I don't know anything about it, I'm explain me like I'm 5. Use this type of example. Put it in an analogy like this. Then, sometimes I say explain like I'm 17, because I don't want to, use toys and whatever, but I want a little bit more, more writing, but not necessarily on a professional layer. So I would say this technology kind of have this duality. And I think just like anything in life, you kind of going to be tempted, right? And so some people, we have to be thoughtful about it. And this is why we have regulations. This is why we have safety, security, is that we cannot just rely on people always to do that, because of our diversity of our thinking, our upbringing, medical conditions, and so forth. And yeah, there's a ton of possibilities. And that's why I encourage people to use it, to sort of debate it, to see good examples, but also highlight when things are not working.
Yeah. I think some people are almost scared to use it because they're fearing that their jobs, right? It's going to come for my job. It's going to take my job. From all the different experiences you've had building and shipping different products, and, you've worked at OpenAI, what's the honest version of whether or not a job is going to disappear? We're seeing all these layoffs, and they're attributing it to AI. I don't know if it is AI or if it's just a rough economy. I mean, what's really happening?
That is a wonderful question. I was one of the executives in the companies who did the layoff. I could answer that question. It is definitely a really distorting the reality of AI because of all of the layoffs that are happening right now, because it invokes fear. So you're processing this technological evolution through a lens of fear. And the part is that there's several scenarios one could walk through. I just saw somebody posted this interesting thought piece about that. There's going to be probably some kind of rehiring because we're still learning about these things. And so it's very hard to sort of, me as a scientist, to put a causality between the two right now. I don't know how to find that evidence. What I do know right now that or at least the way I see the narrative is developed, it's very emotion driven. And so your reaction, the fear is good for eyeballs, for attention, for clicks, etc. Will AI impact the jobs? Yes. But it is more about, at least this is my thesis, and what I currently believe in is that it will change how you work.
It'll change how you work. So how do I prepare for that? If I'm an employee and I have a job and I want to keep my job, how do I start thinking about the how I work part so that I'm prepared and I'm not one of those people that gets laid off, quote, because of AI, quote.
Look, again, we have to separate the causality from real kind of rationale and a decision that goes on the corporate level. But what I see right now is that, coming back to the same principle, if I was right now working in the corporate world where, kind of ground is shifting, I would go and say like, okay, what am I doing right now? What is automatable by AI? Is this all my job right now? And then, sometimes we think about automatable as exact the task we're doing. And there are cases when it's one-to-one. But there's often time when we ask this question deeply, we find we're doing so much more than just this task. And so I always recommend, even in my coaching, to get out of this mindset of fear, because it will pigeonhole you and will make you protective of what you have, which is very normal, and into what is possible with what I'm doing. And occasionally, even to myself, I have to put a mirror and, get close to the mirror and see for what I'm doing. Look, I work in data, and I've oscillated, from leading hundreds of people and building algorithms and products and data analysis and dashboards to going back in the last recent 2 years to become an individual contributor. Can you imagine this?
Wow.
Can you imagine this 5 years ago? I could not imagine. I was like, okay, I had to grieve about my love for tinkering. Okay, maybe I'll do it on my free time. And then I became a plant person, I got my garden. And all of a sudden, the last 2 years, I get back into being IC. And so, we have to leave room to process for our emotions. It is loss of something. Do I know what my job is going to be in the next 5 years? No, but I'm okay with that. Because I'm putting my effort in to figure out, how can I make it exciting? How can I make it interesting? How can I harness my skills and my knowledge, and not necessarily, and be aware, right? Be aware when, I would rather spend an hour and a half to listen to a podcast, or perhaps an hour to listen to Marlo's podcast and learn about all of these details and feel the emotion than read a summary. But sometimes I'm strapped for time and I need a summary because what I'm doing is not as important. So it's a critical thinking that remains. I am betting that most of us in our jobs, you have to do so much critical thinking that you don't attribute to your job description right now. And that's the key. And look, we already have new jobs. I've already seen so many. Somebody was asking recently, are we hiring context engineers or, forward deployed engineers? I was like, wow, we already starting, the people who help others to connect the dots and help, harness the power of this technology in context of their company, of their domain. And I'm like, wow, we're already starting somewhere. So I might be a little bit more of an optimist on that front. But I just think that there's no way avoiding putting the pen to paper. But it could be exciting. You can reimagine your job. You can sell your boss a new job.
Yeah. And that is key. It's kind of getting in front of it, right? As opposed to being behind it and then you're just kind of hiding. Are there specific jobs that you think right off the bat are at risk? I heard a lot in Wall Street about how data analysts won't be needed anymore. These entry-level type roles won't be needed anymore. is there a pattern that you have seen that kind of separates which jobs might disappear, which jobs will still remain? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I like to think about it not from the job description to title, the industry, and more about what you're doing. Look, as I said, I did data, various versions of like whether it's machine learning and you're building the algorithms, to all the way to just dashboards and kind of analytics and reports. I will tell you that what would take me before of generating a report or like somebody, if I was an expert in some kind of a tool that built beautiful graphs and charts and putting it all together, it used to be me, okay, I know what I want to say. Now I have to put it in the dashboard. Like, it takes weeks, sometimes days, depending on the domain. I can do it probably in 30 minutes right now. But you know what remains? Is
the critical thinking, whether or not
what are you going to put on it?
Yeah, what are you putting in there? Yep. What questions are you asking to get the right data? So that's the critical thinking part. It's the prompting, and are you prompting it in a way that you're going to get the data that you want? Because otherwise, you might get something, but it doesn't actually inform you of anything.
No.
Yeah.
And so I think we're going to see a lot of that. It's not even an identity crisis, Marlo. Really, it's just that some things that were sweeping, ignoring is going to come to light. And as an expert in something, it is hard. There's certain things I was expert at, and now the computer or AI can do this for me. But then I'm like, okay, well, fine. We're here. So, but I think you hear the taste everywhere. Oftentimes we associate it with art and culture, but it does apply to job. Like, think about the best people you work with. They just knew how to ask the right question, and they just saw that one little nuance, a detail that actually mattered. That doesn't come from summaries or outsourcing. Like, you still have to do the hard thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you still have to do the critical thinking. So what I'm hearing you say, and I'm hearing you say it over and over, work on your critical thinking skills and don't outsource all of your thinking to AI. Because I know a lot of us, I'll outsource emails to AI and say, write me a nice, thoughtful email back to whomever, right? But that is the critical thinking part that I'm outsourcing. I'm outsourcing how I want to phrase it. So don't outsource your life, basically, to AI.
Look, it's 80-20, right? There's some things, like I always say, there's some things that is like, I would sit in front for 3-4 hours, which supposedly like 15 minutes. This joke about like emptying the dishwasher. You'll think about it 20. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
you think about it 3-4 days.
But it takes I've actually timed it. It literally takes 90 seconds to empty a dishwasher. And it's shocking, right? But you can think about it for 30 minutes before you have to do it, right?
But it's the same thing. If something is true a blocker for you that will unlock your sort of zone of genius, then do it. But then, let's make sure that your tone, your voice, your awesome self does not get lost in it. So I would say that it might take into kind of working with your whole system, right? To make sure that whatever you're doing is sounding, we're reviewing it, or like being judgmental. And sometimes you say like, look, no, I'm not going to send this generic thing. And sometimes you say it's good enough. We still try. I think this is the part of critical thinking that unfortunately the other side of critical thinking, sometimes we're too critical, especially to work of others where it would have been fine. So it just that applies. It's like, what's at stake?
Yeah, and sometimes we're trying to be perfectionists on things that we don't need to be perfectionists on, and AI is just perfect for that. I do see, and I know this just from working with a number of CEOs at AI startups, because I have a number of clients that are CEOs at AI startups, but there is an announcement like every week about some new AI, some new platform, some new this, some new that. How do I even know where to even start with AI? I have a whole list, by the way, of AI programs that I want to check out that I have not had time to even look at, to see if they're even worth like playing with. How do we know what's hype, what's actually moving the needle forward, what I should check out, what I shouldn't check out? Like, how do I focus?
Oh, that is a very hard question, to be honest with you, because again, like one of the things that this technology enabled, artificial intelligence, the type of models that we are investing in and capabilities, is just the speed. Before we just were bounded by human sort of capacity, and now we just unlocked it. So I am not going to speak for anyone, but for someone, a person, I have an ADHD, so my attention is very precious. Um, I definitely do not stay online and read and consume the entire time for all kinds of reasons. But what I found is that there's a certain voices out there, whether it's a podcast or writing, have interesting takes that spark that curiosity. And then the secondary is that I'm just very interested. I like to do things. So I only like, in terms of knowledge and technology and new capabilities, I only like to see the overview, the system, the big picture thinking. Who's working on what? What are people building? What's important right now? And it's more from capabilities. Like, for example, like, your favorite Claude or Anthropic just came out with design tool. Oh, I'm curious, because I am not very good at design. And most of the tools I've been using, only got me to the point where I'm still struggling a lot and I never finish. So I'm going to go check it out. And that's the point. That's actually a lot more rewarding than reading about it. So finding places where something is interesting and you can stick with it. Like you can struggle a little bit with it to learn is a good one. And then a lot of labs a lot of the companies like Anthropic, like OpenAI, like Google put out a lot of interesting, good videos and documentations about the terminologies. I would just say like carve out time and then find the people that you are interested in opinion. And so for me, it means sometimes it's a podcast. Sometimes I read something that they post either Substack or some people post in other areas, but it is a lot. And I would highly recommend having a curated thing and perhaps using summaries for some of them to see where you want to put your attention,
to try to figure out where to put your attention and what to learn. Do you recommend that like business leaders take courses? There are a number of courses out there of, AI, how to use AI in business. Is that a good place to start if I'm a leader and I haven't really incorporated it into my business yet?
Look, I only like to have an opinion or judgment about things I've done myself. So I know there's a lot of courses out there. I always say, ask why you need it, right? Is that for just context, lay of the land? This is something perhaps a course would do, or you may hire somebody to do a workshop where you can still be hands-on. When I was at school and when I was first transitioning from academia into a workforce, I received this excellent advice of saying that the best way of learning by doing, which is when you study mathematics, is it does exist. You need a lot of practice to spot patterns. And I would say is that getting hands-on on the problem then, but truly, context of your business, of what you're doing, of your team, of your current problem is the most important thing. And, you might learn about systems, tools, but unfortunately, or fortunately, we as leaders, the CEOs, the executives that are wanting to learn, they possess the most important factor of making the success: context, experience, decision making. And so it's the matter of applying. And I have seen yet another new role evolving of people hiring into offices of CEO, executives, sort of these people who can spot those use cases or spot those workflows that can be transformed into AI native. Look, it's a big leap. And we are just, this model's been around for a little while. OpenAI just celebrated 10-year anniversary. DeepMind been at it for longer. But I would say that It's only been 3 years since ChatGPT. And look, I use GPT-3, the model itself, before ChatGPT came out. But ChatGPT was an interface. It's a new workflow that unlocked the power of this technology at that point, like, GPT-3, 3.5. And now it's only been 3 years and the world is moving. Lots going on. So I think just some grace, but really like think about this. It's like all of the new AI native workflows have not been discovered. And the people who are going to discover it are sitting there right now and doing the work and having the context of it.
Kind of reminds me of the internet. It's been around since the 70s, but it didn't become big till like the 90s, right? You got the AOL chat rooms and things like that, right? And so, but it was around for 20 years before anybody like now look at it, right? We had dial-up with all the sounds. And then now here we are, of course, with wireless and whatnot. I just I can't even wrap my head around where we're going to be in 2, 5, or 10 years with this. Hopefully I will be long retired and not have to figure it out. But, optimistically, right? Like optimistically, where will we be in 5, 10 years from now, as fast as this is now moving? Because now it's like, I feel like it's almost like we're at the AOL chat room stage, right? Where, that's what it feels like, right? We're 3 years in where it's like become commercialized, where people are now using it. So now I'm like, oh my God, we went from AOL chat rooms to, emails and dating sites and all this other stuff, right? So now I'm just kind of wondering, like in 5, 10 years with AI now, if we're at the AOL chat room stage, like where are we going to be? What's your honest engineering estimate of where we're going to be? What are we going to look at?
Look, I wish I was an oracle. That'd be interesting. Although I think that would be boring. I love
yeah, because then you'd already know, right?
Like, yeah, I would say we kind of we skipped a lot in the last couple of years for many reasons, but I do think that there are kind of, in my opinion, there's going to be a wave on what right now the term is being coined of AI native, which means there was some version of internet that was adopted into the world before the internet, whether it's, the message boards or whatever, and then the email was sort of, you didn't necessarily had a computer print on the paper and mail it.
Yeah.
The snail mail. So what I'm saying is like, I see the next few years where we're going to be creating what's new going to come out of this technology. And then I would just say that it's already there. But right now, we're humans. We, of course, imaginative, but we also put a lot of value in what we see. So we're kind of going after, email was just a mail. My 6-year-old, he even calls the like physical mail email.
He calls it email, right? Because he doesn't know that because there's physical mail.
It's like,
right?
It's just a word. Everyone's like, send me email. So he thinks this is the email. And then I would say that AI kind of native, and I know AI as a word terminology is used a lot, but I think we're in generative state right now. And of course, it comes with the fear, and I don't want to underpower the artifact of just risk that we're introducing with that at much faster speed. But there is a duality to it and to do generative things. We are going to be creative. We're going to figure out so many new things that we're not yet. We still have a lot of change management. So this is what I see, maybe this like next 1-2 years, that we're going to come to senses in terms of, or not experiences, right? By physical and emotional experiences with that. And then, I don't know, we have a lot of hard problems to solve. Compute, energy, physical world, limitations. So I don't know. To me, I'm generally an optimist just by nature. I truly believe it's like, that's why we're so bad at planning. I don't know, Marlo, have you thought about it? Why are we so terrible at planning?
For planning? For AI?
No, generally, we're so terrible at planning. Have you ever seen a plan that actually was like, check, check, check?
Not really. Never goes smoothly. Nothing's ever linear, right?
Yeah. But because we are more prone to optimism than not, because if we were a pessimist, we would never leave the cave. We will never leave the cave. You need to be overestimating like sort of your ability to do things in order for you to have a breakthrough. So I would say that we have to be realists. Like there's a lot of things to figure out: education, critical thinking. But I think there's just a lot of really great things that are there for companies, for leaders, for individuals to discover. And I think this technology is truly, for me, like, for example, breakthrough is like, I don't have to learn the same way that my books taught me, my software taught me, my teachers taught me. It had a benefit. It allowed us all to learn. It spread education, allow us to make education accessible, but we also had to standardize. Now I can learn the way I want to learn and when I want to learn. That's amazing.
That is true. Yeah. I mean, education has evolved a lot, right? There's online education, there's online schools that you can go to in the younger years all the way up through college now, right? Like, so that's evolved. I just kind of wonder, what's next, right? Like what's next, what's coming? And maybe it's solving big problems, but I also wonder, are we destroying ourselves, right? In the process.
It is a good balance. Everything is a balance. We need boundaries, right? So, you kind of have to think critically about it, right? When I told you a story about the summary and then actually to doing the thing, that's the part. It's not always or either, right? It's the part of how you make this decision and how you sharpen your skills and what are we teaching our kids. I was recently at I actually somehow got into, I don't know if you know Dr. Becky Kennedy. She's a famous child psychologist, and she recently wrote a book. And one of the, and she was doing a Q&A, and then one of the things she said in there, which was like, our primary job as a parent right now, I always look at my parents who said, we struggle so much. My job is to make your life easier. But our job right now, like me as a parent, is like to help my kids to learn how to struggle. Because the harder is easier, sometimes, but not all the time. Look, and this is like, how do you discriminate? How do you choose where the learning will go? How to keep your muscles sharpened? No one really loves going to the gym, and yet.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point for like early career professionals and for mid-career professionals is that AI may make your life really easy, but you might need to take the hard route here and there in order to develop those skills that will then make you valuable longer.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you don't gain those skills, you're not going to be valuable longer.
Correct. And then that's what I say. It's like we're looking at it. This is another thing I would say, a part of as a data person and analyst in machine learning and data science, is all the versions that, exist of the, what you call kind of my specialty. It's very easy to fall into metrics. But, metrics are measured. So if you only optimize for what you're able to measure, then, you're going to get certain outcomes. And so there's always the long term and the short term. And the long term, even if you can measure it, it takes long time. And now everything, let's do faster. So it takes the courage, to push yourself and to say like, I'm going to take longer here. And I truly believe long term is going to pay off, even for young professionals right now, because there's just some skills that we're learning in that process that go a long way. Just like exercising, right? Like if you easier part is just do the same thing all the time. The harder part, you add more weight, change up your routines, etc. It's that type of resistance need to exist, and I think that's the one part where we just need to embrace the struggle a little bit more.
What would you recommend if I'm a CEO or I'm a high-level executive and I haven't really embraced AI yet? I'm waiting for it to be a little bit better, or whatever the case may be. I just haven't had a chance. What would be one thing you would recommend that they start just doing today?
I mean, I always tell people, whether you run a business with 3 employees or 3,000 employees, your employees are already using AI. So you want them to use AI with the context of your organization. So that's the part. That's already non-negotiable. I read a research, I think earlier this year, it came out late last year, that adoption of people bringing AI into workforce, into their life is like skyrocketed. It's probably, I think it was like, I'm not going to quote the number, I don't quite remember, but it definitely doubled year over year. But utilization is still quite low. So I think if I were a CEO right now, I would be less worried, like I need to bring an AI, or if I'm an executive into my team, it's more about how do I make sure that people using it in a way that compounding the impact, right? Coming back to those AI, how do we rethink our workflows? Now that we don't not need to do all of these things, what would we want to do, right? Like, what are the things that we've always dreamt about doing as a business, or products we want to build? Can we build them now? What's in the way? So that's kind of the thinking that needs to change. So I would say getting AI tools, solutions, table stake. How do you use it? That's where the next sort of.
And then how do you accelerate your business from there in the areas that you haven't had time for? Or because you're so busy doing everything else that you should now not be doing because you have AI to do it. What if you're a mid-career professional, or, not a developer or a data scientist per se, but what is one thing that I should be doing as a mid-career professional?
You already know my answer. Just use it. Find a problem to solve, right? Find a problem to solve. It's all about starting. And the best part, Marlo, in this technology, you don't need a tutorial. You can literally ask your agent or your bot to teach you how to use it for your problem.
Yeah, it can teach you. I mean, right now you can ask Google anything or any, and it shows up with AI, on how to, fix anything, do anything, it will teach you how to do it, more or less, if you don't know how to do it.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. And that's the piece, and I think it's that usage, it's that experience doing it for yourself. And again, going past first impression and then just iterating. What do you learn here? Like, there is times where I'm like, my literal saying is like, who do you think you are? This is like, okay, I'm just so frustrated. I'm going to close my computer. This is like not going anywhere. And there's sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't even thought about it. That's totally it. Like, okay. Or, I was writing something and I let my chatbot edit it. And I look at the edits, I was like, ooh, that is not good. And I'm like, is it because this thing is not good, or because I didn't have a strong thesis in my writing?
Okay. Well, and we also hear a lot, Tatsiana, we hear a lot about learn to prompt, right? Like that's what's the advice that's floating around. Is that enough? Or is that basically telling somebody in 1995 to learn how to Google?
Prompting is still valuable because it's a language in which, or how it's basically a way of you to structure what you want. I actually think prompting is a lot more valuable than learning how to Google, because you had a very short bar in which you can enter the search, and like only certain things will matter. But with prompting, it's actually like an interesting way for me to help me to structure my thoughts in a certain way. Like, what is important right now in context of my question? What am I actually asking here? And it doesn't mean that you have to have an anxiety and have everything right. I don't believe in that. Like, I only believe in that I often start with something. Sometimes it's super ambiguous, but it helps me think. I'm like, oh, okay, now I have a little bit more context. Let me open a new window and write in it, right? Like now with this type of context. So it is that kind of a learning mindset I mentioned earlier, that just this experimentation and the curiosity. And then voila, you become, you all of a sudden, like you just become both like able, and nothing is better when you can create something that is tangible, right? And I think right now it's a lot of this is software, or perhaps, it could be a skill you learn, right? That can be applied in the digital world. I recently wrote up my kid a mystery scavenger hunt because I use OpenAI. Like, I'm a very model agnostic in the sense of like I have different uses. it's like so good at generating images. I came up with these fictional characters and, have pictures of it. Like now I can reuse them. And, now they're waiting for a letter from their, as their like esteemed detectives because of that. So that's like, you know what I mean? Like, when would I do this before?
Right. Yeah. So there is a way to use AI to engage even with your children in ways that might be different than you thought before. Because that's really interesting. You said they're waiting for a detective to get back to them on something?
Oh, no, they are detectives.
Oh, they are detectives. Oh, yeah, got it.
We're doing like in a house scavenger hunts. And so, for example, like, before we either buy it on Pinterest or maybe start something. And, a lot of us are working parents. And oftentimes we might have a best intention, but not enough time. But now it's like, okay, I have all these little things. Like I have it come up with a custom writing and a paper thing. I mean, I still have to come up with ideas because I'm the only person who knows my house and knows my kids. But like everything else, all of this other stuff that would have been a blocker is gone now. And so they don't quite know that AI makes that in a sense of, but there's parts of, sometimes we generate some pictures together, like for creativity. Like I would open my computer and then we're like, okay, what do you want to see?
Yeah. Interesting. So for those out there who are, thinking of maybe they want to join an AI company, right? They want to work at an AI company because that's the hot new thing right now. Is there anything that they should be asking to reveal whether that company has real substance or whether they're just riding a wave and that company's not going to make it?
There is this, it's very hard to say right now what is AI company and not AI because everyone is adopting a lot of AI practices. And so I would also almost like ask the question of whether a company, like how a company is using AI, including the product, like how is this implemented, right? I know people back in, and so if we talk about startups and the native companies, it's like back in the day, we all talked about moat. Moat is that sort of defensible product part. Different companies and industries had different ones. So that's quite evolving right now, and so thinking about this critically in a sense of what actually you're building and how are you contributing and, looking through scenarios because as again, like this industry is evolving so much, but honestly, it's like this is a part of like the startup life. You have to take risk of unknown. If there is a list of questions that gives you certainty, there is still uncertainty. Like think about how many companies were there building apps for iPhone or on top of Facebook or Twitter at that time, now X. So I think it's just it's the ecosystem where you discover things, and so startups are hard to begin with. And I think when you think about AI native companies that are building right now, you kind of have to ask about this, like kind of a strategies, like what if X happens, right? Like what if this model, what its capability will come out, like how the company will differentiate, right? What is repeatable? Why users come or other businesses come to this company to buy the technology. And then sometimes it depends on the stage too, because with early companies, I've seen sometimes in the first couple of years, there might be like 7th iteration of the idea, but you're learning by doing. Like it's just an incredible pace right now, which you can learn by doing. And you can actually 3 years later build completely different product now. And so I would say like, that's, so the questions you ask right now is just more for to align with your time horizon and what you want to do and what you want to learn. But startups have always been risky. It's like if anything is certain, then it's a phase of
yeah, it's certain that not all of them will succeed, right? Are there any red flags, though, that will signal whether a company is going to survive in the next 18 months? Is it a product, team, strategy? Is there any like something to grasp onto?
Yeah, I would say just generally speaking, it comes down to the same principles. Are you past the demo stage?
Oh, do you like does the demo work? Yeah, and can you scale
you passed
it, right?
the demo stage. What are you building? What's the traction, right? And not even financial, like show me the workflows people are building.
Got it.
With it.
Okay.
show me how they're built. Like you kind of using the next, like double clicking now on that tier of thinking is like, because it's very easy right now to have a demo. It's very easy to have a product that looks polished, right? But I want to see like workflow. How are people using this? What are their frustrations? What do you think is missing? How easy it is, like how easy it is to replace? Is it because it's just a nicer user experience, or is it because something of like, what kind of feedback loop exists, right? How do you make things better?
How many other companies are doing the same thing this company's doing?
Yeah, well, that is a hard one too right now, right? Like, and there's a temptation too. Like, we have to understand right now that everyone got a lower the barrier to building things. Whether they have durability, resilience is a different question, but I can probably prompt myself into never using data visualization software ever in my life. But whether I want to do it, it's a different question, right, to ask. So that is the biggest, I think, thing about the sort of barrier to entry. So when I think about if I would look for a job, like, or look at the companies, AI companies, it's the part that the part of the product that becomes durable, the workflows. Why would I not build? Like, it's almost like a litmus point now. Like, why would I not build it myself? Like, why would I have somebody else to do it?
Why would I need your company to do that? That's interesting. Is there anything about AI's impact at work that you wish more people were talking about that isn't getting enough attention?
Yes, I do have this one topic. Interesting that you asked this, is that I think with AI, and this is not AI per se, it's already been sort of happening from the remote work and post-pandemic, is collaboration. I also say this is just because if you think about speed, collaboration will slow you down, but the outcome of that can be innovation, creativity, problem solving. It's also very human. Everyone has different methods of communication. A lot of this technology you will speed up. Just to say, like, why would I do this if I can just have this agent, like, coding agent, build it for me?
Do it for me, yeah. You don't need to collaborate anymore.
Yeah, and I think it's like, I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but I'm saying that I see this a lot because everyone is just building a lot, and there might be a view that you have to slow down to collaborate. And just like anything in life, you need both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that collaboration also gives you different perspectives. You might not even be prompting the right way. You might not even be thinking the right way about something. But the collaboration, like you said, perspective, innovation, right? It's what helps you see things completely differently. Where if you just ask it to spit it out, okay, great, it spit it out. But what if you asked it differently?
Exactly. And the part is that, we have to think about all of the, like, what makes us human. And what makes us human is that part of learning different perspective, challenging your own assumptions, sitting with something uncomfortable, right? That doesn't happen when you're solo. And I do think that we kind of have to be thoughtful organizationally. I don't know where we land with this, but a lot of, I've observed it across a lot of my sort of my professional network that this is happening. And I think there's a true danger of like exacerbating monoculture with that. And I don't know the outcome, but I would just say that this is the one thing I would flag to any kind of leader.
It's a big flag, I would say. All right, one last question. This is a fun one. If you could put one sentence on a billboard for every executive in America right now about AI, what would it say?
I would say you already have AI. Now you just need to use it.
Interesting. You already have it. You just need to use it. Okay. It's a good way to end. Tatsiana, thank you so much for being here on Work Unscripted. I hope people learned a little bit more about AI, a little bit more about the red flags, something to think about as far as collaboration, which is a big one. Don't lose collaboration in your workforces. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. This was really fun. And it actually made me think too. So I appreciate the space to have this discussion.
In case you missed it, here's the takeaway. AI is not something to blindly hand your thinking over to, and it's also not something to ignore. AI can help us move faster, but moving in the right direction still requires critical thinking, collaboration, and curiosity. And above all, it requires leaders who are willing to learn instead of pretending this is not happening. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who's trying to understand how AI fits into their work and career. And as always, stay curious, stay growing, and stay unscripted. The journey is yours. Work Unscripted is produced and edited in partnership with the team at Palm Tree Podco and 21 Digby. The content for this week's episode was created by me, Marlo Lyons.